of this discussions. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. Well, these are definitely incredible times. I know a lot of us have been here, for many years. And definitely, I know nobody has seen the Naira at 1,006 to the dollar before. I don't know if you've seen that before. Anybody here seen that before? This exchange rate we're seeing right now, no? Inflation numbers, about 30%. I'm sure we've not seen that also. And definitely an investment decision has to be made with all of this. I'm going to start with Mrs. Kemi Akinde now. And definitely, as I said, an investment, has to be made no matter how the economy is. But you want to make a kind of investment that you don't end up losing, your money. So break it down for us. What investment opportunities would you say are available for SMEs and individuals at this time?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to appreciate the leadership of RCCG for this well-organized program. And I also like to thank Pastor Pitan. He's done a very great job, and he's spoken through a couple of investment opportunities. I want to place it in context. Investment opportunities can be in real assets or in financial assets. So you talk about agribusiness, you talk about real estate. So those are like the engines that run. It can also be in financial assets, so you're not actively involved. So that is passive. So the first one is more active, while the other one is passive. And we remember the parable of the talents, 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. Now the 5 and 2 talents, they traded and they doubled, okay? The 1 talent hid his talent, and Jesus said, then you should have invested my money with the bankers. When I return, I would have received my money back with interest. So that's like the worst thing you can do with money. Put it in the bank and get some interest on it. All right? So that parable also shows us that the other 2 were involved in, I would say, the real investment, the real asset side, and they're able to double the money. Now, the one with the 1 talent could have at least said, 5 talent guy, have my money. I know you can double things, and then I'll get at least a double portion, but he didn't do that. So both of them are flip side of the same coin, and both are needed to get things running in the economy. On the real side, Professor is going to speak to that. So I'm going to talk about investment in like financial instruments. So more of the passive kind of investment. You still have your job, so you're not resigning your job to go do those, to explore those investment opportunities. So I'm going to be speaking to the passive, to the financial asset kind of investment. So just to place it in context. So I've already mentioned one. At least earn some interest on your money in the bank. You might say, how much do they pay really? It's a pittance. But I know someone who has some funds in the bank. It's not even up to $1 million anyway. And he gets interest on a monthly basis, and the interest can cater to at least 2 of his bills. All right, so you need to explore that. All right, some of you are saving money for certain projects. Why not earn interest on that money? All right, so you need to talk to your bank and then see how it works. Now, there are certain conditions to it. Maybe you must not withdraw more than maybe 3 times in a month. So most people have at least 2 bank accounts, okay? So dedicate one to earning interest, dedicate one to your normal transactions. All right, so you're able to optimize, your account holdings. Another dimension I'm going to bring to the financial, investment is in terms of ownership. Some afford you ownership in the company, some don't. So it's like rather than a company going to the bank, they can come to the public, all right, and try to get funds. So you're not a part owner in that business, okay, but you're funding that business and they're paying you an interest. All right, so those are the 2 ways I'm going to view, financial assets generally, or investment opportunities that are passive. All right, so the first I mentioned is just like savings deposit, so you get interest on it. Now, The banks are structured. They've established an institution to go out there, look for companies, look for borrowers that are not going to default or have low probability of defaulting. And then they monitor the project, they evaluate, they do all that. You are not going to be doing all that, okay? So you can't expect to put your money in the bank and get the kind of returns the bank is getting, all right? Now, the next is Treasury bill investments. Treasury bill is a short-term loan to the government. Pastor Pitan talked about the budget deficit. It's going to be financed, okay? So they will issue bills, they will issue bonds to finance, part of the deficit. Treasury bill investments come in three types of maturity. So we have the 91-day, we have the 182-day, and we have the 364-day maturities. And they're default risk-free. So put it in context. Annulment of June 1993 election, fast forward to the global financial crisis, talk about NSAS, talk about the pandemic, talk about what's even happening now. They've never defaulted, and they will not default because it's a local currency loan. Okay.
Right. Definitely a lot to run down through, but I'm still gonna come back to you again to get more of those investment classes, because right now we know that the investment classes are there, but now we have people that don't even have the disposable income to actually go and put their money out there because they have to eat. But before I come back to you, we'll come back to you on that. Let me invite Pastor Pitan to join us right here for this session. He's going to be also sharing his wealth of experience with us. Put your hands together for Pastor Pitan, please. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. All right, so I'm going to move to Professor Segun Ajibola because, at this time, when you see the way the economy is going, identifying growth sectors, might be a challenge because you're definitely clouded, by all the challenges right now. Help us, identify this growth sectors that are available that we cannot see, at this time, and how to navigate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I thank my very good brother and friend, Pastor Pitan, for that exposition and insights. Let me say this. I have some slides that show clearly some background about the budget for 2024. Where are the areas of opportunities in that budget? What are the likely issues that may impede taking opportunities in those various sectors of our national economy? What are the solutions to those problems that will galvanize us into a successful end at the end of the fiscal year? You've asked me, sir, to look at the opportunities available for individuals, for SMEs. Who are we really talking about? We are talking about a class constituting about 45% of the size of our economy. We are talking about individuals that are perhaps part of the 60% living below the poverty line in Nigeria. What opportunities are available for them and to them in this economy? We are talking about SMEs. Majority of the players belonging to this same set of individuals with registered business entities or without. So we are talking about those who are struggling for survival, who are looking for investment opportunities to meet their basic necessities of life, food, clothing, and shelter. We are talking about those who want to go into one kind of investment opportunity or the other to feed their family, to pay their children's school fees, to meet other recurring expenses, to keep life going. We are talking about individuals and SMEs that are key man, key woman in their businesses. So we are talking about those who cannot afford to gamble, those who have opportunity to invest, but that opportunity, they cannot miss it. Otherwise, all the problems, people dropping dead, people developing serious ailments in case of a mistake made. Therefore, look for those opportunities. As it's often said, there are those who see opportunities in problems, and there are those who see problems in opportunities. But we are saying in 2024, let's look for opportunities, even within the problematic environment that we find ourselves. Opportunities abound, left, right, and center. And let me situate some of the opportunities mentioned by Pastor. Sweet generis. I'm a farmer. I run a commercial farm. There are opportunities for individuals and SMEs in agriculture as of today. Look for farming. There are crops with cash conversion cycle of about 90 days, 120 days. Go into grains. Go into cassava. Go into fruits and vegetables. These are quick wins that you can convert to cash within the space of this fiscal year 2024. There are those other business opportunities in poultry. Poultry has a challenge now. Even animal rearing. In the environment, when we talk about the informal sector, there are opportunities. Even the way we used to do certain things, like the vulcanizer there, has been modernized. One can go into even event planning, hairdressing, barbing. These are small-scale businesses with very short span, through which you can realize some cash and make some good income. Yes, there are opportunities, so as not to take so much time. There are opportunities, there are problems. As individuals, we are reeling seriously under the burden of inflation. But in the budget too, there are copious provisions to tackle some of these macroeconomic problems. Please, as individuals, as small-scale entrepreneurs, let's avoid what is called currency mismatch. A good example in our environment today are the discos. We've been struggling with the discos because they borrow dollar to generate naira revenue. How are they paying back their banks? With naira income to pay dollar loan. So if as an individual, don't expose yourself, don't make yourself vulnerable to things that you cannot control within your immediate environment. If we are talking about peace, if we are talking about next level, it's a different thing. But when you are talking about Pastor Pitan, when you are talking about Segun Ajibola, when you are talking about Mr. Akinde, it's a different matter entirely. There are some risks I cannot afford to take because my appetite to take those risks is very, very limited if I go into it. In my farm, we used to buy a cutlass, 750 naira, as at today, 4,500 naira. Insects is the same thing.
Right.
So the list is as long as that, because we talk about cost optimization. But the most important thing is I cannot go into something that we put on my head, what I call currency mismatch. So let me look at businesses where I need naira to invest and where I need naira as a revenue. There are opportunities here and there. Just, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, Lagos State launched its trader money, 50,000 naira to 15,000 individuals within Lagos. There are so many other opportunities like that in Bank of Industry, in microfinance banks. Even Lagos State has Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. So opportunities abound where we can source funds for the kind of businesses that we've talked about.
Exactly. Right.
There are opportunities here and there. So we can take advantage of that. But we too, we need to show two things. We want to play and want to go along with government macroeconomic objectives. Number one objective in our environment today is food security. Let's we too have that commitment. Not that we are looking for trader money to buy a new car. Not that we are looking for trader money to provide for household items. We are looking for trader money to invest in what we can control, generate revenue, pay back the money.
Thank you for that, Prof.
We are also, finally, sir,
Yeah.
we must be sure that we have a bankable proposal. Most times, both the lenders and the borrowers, they run into this problem. The lender is financing something that he himself is not convinced about because there's no feasibility study that will show that that money will be paid back. The borrower himself is gambling. He needs 10 million. Lender is saying, take 4 million. To do what? So these are some of the things. In other words, everything we are talking about, taking advantage of the opportunity in the budget, it involves everybody.
All right,
both
Prof.
the individual, the SME, and public institutions that are responsible for making things work.
Thank you for that, Prof. Thank you. Definitely. So you heard Prof there. You know, once you get that funding, you need to make sure you're using it for your business. Don't go splurging, you know, when you have your business to actually take care of. But I'll come to Dr. Alomna now. And we heard Prof there talk about how much cutlasses, the cost of cutlasses have gone up. And you, as a business, as an individual, you find yourself in this position right now with the little money you're still making or the revenue you're making. How can you optimize it to a level where you're able to manage your costs? Because as we've heard, you cannot reduce costs. But how do you optimize it to a level where you can still do business and manage your revenue and your cost, you know, going forward?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you to Pastor Remy and his lovely wife for having us here today to have this conversation. And thanks, Pastor Olukayode, for that outlay of very interesting, you know, information about the economy and how we can harness the opportunities. Now, if from the last two speakers, they talked about the opportunities that abound in the environment today. So imagine yourself, you have prayed, you have taken advantage, you have invested right, you have ensured currency matching, you have ensured you're going to the right sector, and then you're making money. That's fantastic, that's a testimony. Then you make all this money, but every time you look at your bottom line, your profit is tiny. That means that you're not optimizing your cost. So the very important part of this whole conversation is how do you optimize your cost? We had a project in my office last year, and we were rejoicing. We had the best revenue, you know, in the last how many years we are having this project. However, we had the lowest profit because we had not optimized our cost. So optimizing your costs, whether you call it reduction, decrease, cutting, whatever you call it, but you have to be able to manage the cost. Now, the economy hasn't helped because the cost of everything is rising. So how do you optimize costs when costs are rising? So that just creates a need for you to be more innovative. So I'll focus on like three things. The first thing, and Pastor Olukayode mentioned it, is technology. You have to think technology. Some people say, hey, I'm getting old, I don't understand all these tech things. If you don't understand the tech things, find somebody who understands the tech things. Because now the tech things are the only way you can help yourself ensure efficiency. There are some tasks you do in your business every day, but you don't need somebody to come in and do it every day. You can find a technology, an app. There's an app for almost everything now. Find an app that works, that can help you ensure efficiency. It also helps you to streamline your processes. In every business, you have step-by-step things that you have to do. With technology, sometimes it abridges things. So instead of doing 1 to 10 processes, you may be able to do 1, 3, and 6, and you're done. So think, how do we cut out the waste? How do we cut out the waste? Because we need to change the way we do things for us to be efficient. So technology is a big thing. Find a way to get about it. The second thing I'll focus on is people. People are important. They're so important. And you have people in your life. Pastor Olukayode talked about the best way to get money is from, father and mother bank. Yes, but you have a network. We all have networks. So think within your network, how do we begin to partner? You can partner with people, partner with businesses to make things better, even as an individual. Today we're saying the cost of fuel is so high, but we all put our cars on the road. From here to VI, everybody's driving to VI. Everybody maybe with empty cars, just you and maybe the driver. Can you think of how we can, merge people, and pull people together to move in a particular direction? We had a client engagement in Ibadan 2 weeks ago, and we're all thinking, somebody was in Elupeju, another person in Ikoyi, somebody in Lekki, and everyone was just thinking, let's just all go to Ibadan. But somebody said, hey, why do we all need to have 4 cars on the road going to Ibadan? Let's find one vehicle. We all pick everybody, and we go to Ibadan. Isn't that saving costs? So we have to think about it, but we have to be conscious, we have to be intentional about it. And that's the same thing with businesses. If we're all going to get produce from Benin, can we, everybody say, I want tomato, I want yam, I want vegetable. We all pull together, and somebody goes to get it. We've reduced our cost. So you have to think partnership, you have to think collaboration. How do we do it together to be better? Because then we are all then reducing our cost. So people, that's important. Also, if you're able to partner well, you can also reduce your cost of going to market. So if I sell or cook pepper soup, and somebody else can sell or is cooking some other meal, if we come together, we can have a mini restaurant, and we can have access to market very easy. If somebody has bread, and another person has coffee, and another person has egg, we've made breakfast for people, and we pull together. So pulling resources together, pulling people together, all of those can help you optimize your cost. Also think about, the third thing I'll talk about, so one is technology, 2 is people, and how we engage with people. Think about your staff. One of the areas where we always complain, small businesses complain, staff. Sometimes the staff hasn't been well trained, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, training is so expensive, training is so expensive. However, the cost of the error, you can't even imagine, you can't account for it. So it's actually better to train the people. Somebody once said, what if we train all these people and they leave? The other perspective is, what if we don't train them and they stay? You're really in trouble. So you have to think, how do I make the best of the people I have? How do I reduce the error margin within the business? And how do I reduce my losses? Because if you don't train that small receptionist that you think, she's just out of school, we don't need to bother with training. She's the one who interfaces with all the customers that come to your business. Just one small move, you have lost 50% of your customers, and you're thinking, the devil is at work. No, the devil is not at work. You haven't trained the people that you work with. So we have to think people. The third thing I'll mention is operations. Think about your operations. For some of us, we keep stock. If you're a small business and you trade, you keep stock. You now need to think, how much stock do we need to keep? Because for keeping stock, you're incurring costs of keeping stock or keeping inventory. Begin to think, how can I maybe forecast better and determine demand so I can have just-in-time stock keeping? I don't need to hire a warehouse and fill it because there's no money. So you have to think about what you can do, the minimum you can do to move forward. So think of how you can get your operations to be efficient.
Right.
I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Alomna, because at the end of the day, you are making some money at this time, but if you don't manage it well, it all goes to waste. So remember, I'm already seeing some questions coming in at this time. Keep sending those questions in, but I'm going to quickly come to Pastor Pitan now, and it's about this exchange rate issue. And from where we're coming from, from the previous government, I would like your candid opinion here. Would any or can any central bank leadership get this currency thing right in the shortest time? Is it possible?
Thank you very much. It's not as easy as it looks. I've seen arguments. Okay, when the president came in, new president, and the subsidy was removed, some were saying that if the government had stayed at that, maybe with that action, and postponed maybe unification of the rates, we won't have this type of pressure. But don't forget that I'm an economist. And they will tell you in economics that economists have two hands. They will tell you on one hand, and they will say on the other hand. Now, on the other hand, there are economists, even before the president came in, who had been saying that the problem with foreign exchange in Nigeria is that it was opaque, you know, and that because it was close to being allocated before. Now, allocation that was being done before, you know, it gives too much power to a few people. And from what we have seen and what we have heard, there were abuses with that system. So this system was supposed to be more transparent, you know, for people to have a true value of the cost of the naira. I think also the government also believed that if they went this way, because at that time IMF was saying and all this World Bank, you know, this is what government must do. So I believe that they felt that if they had done their own part of it, which is what they have done, that the IMFs of this world, the foreign investors of this world will come with money. What has happened is that government has done what people have been asking them to do for a long time. What has not happened is that people that said they are going to bring money, they have not brought money. You know? And then we have challenges with oil revenue because production, you know, has gone down. Oil is being stolen. That's a major area. If you ask me, in the short time that we have, the new central bank governor is trying to stabilize this. You know, new circulars, for instance, PTA, all of those ones, they will not allocate that in cash anymore. But
So definitely it's not possible.
there's some problem in the short term. But if you look at Nigerian banks today are sitting on close to 30 billion US dollars in domiciliary accounts. People will tell you that what Nigeria needs now is about 10 to 12 billion. So the truth is that if Nigerians actually believe in Nigeria, the money we are looking for is in Nigeria. Because if government were to float a bond and say, this is, you know, why can't Nigerians invest in this bond? If Nigerians invest in Nigerian bond and buy 10 billion worth of it, we won't have a problem. What we are going through now is that most Nigerians have lost, you know, they are taking dollars as store of value. They are buying dollars they don't need. And for as long as Nigerians don't believe in the naira, you know, quote and unquote, you can't blame some Nigerians because there was also a lot of naira that was printed. This problem will persist because now it is not money being bought to import. It's money being bought to be kept as a store of value. It's a major challenge. Any central bank governor will struggle.
So any central bank governor that got it will have struggled at the end of the day. That's from Pastor Pitan there. Definitely, because it's a tough one. You know, definitely. And everybody expected some kind of magic wand, you know, would take away, you know, all our problems. But I guess we'll have to do some heavy lifting before we get some kind of soft landing going forward. So right about now, we're going to dive straight into the Q&A session at this time. And I'm going to start off with Mrs. Akinde, you know, at this time. The question is, good morning. Please, can she elaborate more on Treasury bill investment and which bank offers the best interest rate? That's for you.
Okay, a bit more exposition on Treasury bills. Like it's a loan to the government, And there are three kinds of maturities: 91 day, 182 day, and 364 day. Auctions are done fortnightly, and the last auction was on February 7th. That was last week, Wednesday. And the rate for the 91 was about 17% per annum. For the 182 was about 18%. And then for the 364 was about 19%. Now, the minimum you need to invest sounds like a real big number, 50 million. Okay, hold on. I know that's where the problem is now. You can buy at the auction, so that's what we call primary markets, and then you can do secondary, but let's just do the secondary. So what happens is a number of investment companies actually take smaller denominations. So some take as low as maybe like 1 million. So you need to check out with a couple of investment companies. You can buy through your bank and you can buy through investment companies. So some take as low as like 1 million. So they pull 1 million in so many places. Of course, that's the minimum. All right, and then they bid. So you're able to enjoy that high rate even though you don't have that much money. Another thing is like, I would just mention mutual funds. Okay, that even comes in lower minimum subscription. So some have as low as 2,500 and in multiples of 100 naira. Some have as low as maybe, say 10,000. So what they do is this. If you go to the bank, all right, even if it is deposit, you don't have that much negotiation power because of the volume of funds you have, okay? But when they pull these funds from the 2,500 and some pull millions, they pull it together, they have a stronger negotiation power. So able to enjoy the rate you would normally have gotten, all right? Then they also have opportunity of investing in other things. So they also invest in treasury bills and then in commercial papers. There was a commercial paper that closed yesterday. It was offering 16%, but the minimum investment is 5 million. So how many people can afford that? But so what mutual funds do? There are different types of mutual funds. So money market mutual funds specifically, they invest in things that are close to being money, things that can easily liquidate for money. So that's why I call them money markets. All right. So they invest in all these high denomination or high subscription, high minimum subscription investments, but able to offer you at lower rates. So you can subscribe with 10,000, 2,500. I think if there's any other question, or maybe I should just also mention one other thing, which is FGN Savings Bond.
Okay.
All right, so that one comes in two maturities, 2-year and 3-year. And they do the auction for it every month. So the first week of the month, they will do the auction. You just need to talk to an investment manager. Once they onboard you and they have your email, when all these opportunities open, you will get them in your inbox. So you have that pipeline of information. So the one for this month closed, that was on Valentine's Day on February 14th. The 2-year was offering, I think, about 12.7%. And then FGN Savings Bond, they pay interest on a quarterly basis. So you get the 12.7% divided by 4. You get it 4 times a year. So like the February, you get it in May, August, November, and then February. Then after 2 years, they give you your money back. Then there's also the 3-year horizon. So that ends with like, the auction was like 13%. All right, you might say it's not beating inflation, but look, it's better than your money just sitting there and you earning nothing. The minimum for that is 5,000 naira and in multiples of 1,000 naira. So you can buy it through your bank and can buy it through an investment manager. And if you're buying it through any of these investment managers, make sure they are registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, because there are a lot of people out there who do funny things. All right, thank you.
And definitely, as you mentioned there, everybody is trying to beat inflation, at this time, and currency devaluation. But, in 2023, coming into 2023, the sentiment was, it was going to be risk-off. Risk-off sentiment, meaning investors wouldn't be taking on that much risk. But we see in 2023, risk assets did really well. So, still, Dr. Mrs. Kemi Akinde, tell me about 2024. Is it risk-off sentiment you're seeing or risk-on?
I'll say that depends on individual investor, okay? Given the environment, people want to be cautious as well because, of course, cost is rising and then people want to be cautious on their investment, so you don't want to lose the little that you have. Like you mentioned, for risk asset, they actually perform quite well. All right. So earlier when I mentioned, I said there are certain investments that you have ownership stake, and that's equity investment. Okay. So when you talk about risky asset, the first thing that comes to mind is equity, because with equity, the person can lose everything. Unlike the other ones I've mentioned, that there is a contract, they pay a certain interest. Now, the equities market, people have a certain conception like, oh, it's a gamble, it's a casino, it's something like that. But if you have that understanding, then your companies like Fitson, your companies like Dangote Cement, almost all your banks, they are listed, your flour mills, then they must be gamble. So if you don't believe that's the case, then they are not. So how does it work? If you have maybe a mom and pop store, okay, and you think, oh, this business is doing fine, they're making good sales, and they're kind of nimble on cost, I want to put my money in there, and give them your money. And then a need arises, you need that money. Look, they've stocked up the shop. They can say, go look for someone else who can buy you out. Like, we've invested the money. We have to sell this and do all that before we can pay you back, okay? So that's the benefit of the stock market. It gives you that opportunity, that liquidity opportunity. So you've invested in the companies, they're running the engines with the money, but you need your money back. There is that platform, thousands, millions of buyers and sellers, so you can easily sell your own stake. So you are trading your stake in the business. So equities markets, sorry, just a minute, if you had invested in the equities market, like the entire basket, okay, last year it was up by about 46%. And so far this year, we have about almost 10 companies that are listed on the exchange, right, that have returned over 50%. The worst performing stock as of yesterday had lost 19%. That's even not up to the inflation rate. But like say, you've got to do your research. And part of the things I've been saying, you want companies that don't have too much FX exposure. So they're making revenue and they're retaining quite something substantial in profit. At this time, you don't want companies that are cyclical. So companies that don't do well when the economy is not doing well, and they do well when the economy is performing well. So just look for a couple of those things. But once you on board with an investment manager, and we can always ask their research for recommendations. So what kind of companies you advise about? We talk about banking recapitalization, for instance. So last year, there was a euphoria about banks. So banks are going to recapitalize. How are they going to get the money? They will come out to the market and do a public offer. So they open it up to the public, be a part owner in a bank, and then you can buy the shares of the bank. And so that euphoria alone lifted some of the banking stocks, and then the price rallied. But the main thing is, in terms of risk, it depends on like each individual appetite. If cost environment wasn't that high, okay, people might be willing to take on a whole lot of risks. But now, I think people have been kind of modest about it. But sorry, also on the other side, because of the high cost, people want, investment that can really give them very good gain to, offset the inflation impact. So it still depends on individual risk appetite. Thank you.
Low risk and high yielding.
If
that's even possible.
That doesn't work. So the higher the risk, the higher the return. So you need to understand that as well.
Yeah. So we have more questions here. There are loads of questions, very, very intelligent and real questions, coming in at this time. I'm going to go to the next one now. It says food security is a problem and an opportunity, but how do we support this? A viable opportunity is cold storage for perishable items, but how does one work around the different groups? And the groups here are touts, revenue collectors, pressure groups, unions, etc., especially as a small or new business. So how do you handle all of this? I'm going to let Professor Segun Ajibola answer this one.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if you will permit me. I have just 2 sentences to drop on the issue of exchange rate. Am I permitted? First of all, I keep seeing this question of $30 billion in domiciliary accounts, which can help us solve our problem. But the banks, do they have $30 billion in their fort? The $30 billion balances in domiciliary accounts are also in the hands of Nigerian businessmen and women, importers, exporters. They've all lent this money. The banks also get involved in foreign currency loans. It's like the deposit Ghana in Naira. As financial intermediary, they've lent this money to borrowers. The same thing, foreign currency balances in their books. If all the depositors in domiciliary accounts ask for their money today, $30 billion will not come from anywhere. Because the money is already in the hands of those who have borrowed them. So I keep wondering about this 30 billion being somewhere that can solve government problems and so on and so forth. Majority, if not the entire 30 billion, of that amount is already in the hands of Nigerian businessmen and women into export, import, even if some of them have not been used of for some permanent form of capital in importing plant and machinery, in business expansion purpose, for business expansion purposes, and so on and so forth. So I think it is a mirage to say that we have $30 billion somewhere that government can just take to solve the problem. I can't see it. If it exists there, then that is like turning banking upside down. You take on the deposit, you unlend, you make your money from that. Then the second one is the issue of maybe the regulator and the current exchange rate. What can they do? Like they have said, there's nothing the central bank can do in expanding the tentacles for supply of dollar into the economy. But they can influence the market through certain policies. That's number one. Number two, I think our demand management strategy is a bit weak in this environment. We can still do a lot. We have very, very unwinding import list in this environment. The other day, we returned 43 items to the official market. And some of us were wondering, do we now have excess supply in the foreign exchange market that warranted calling on importers of those 43 items to come and take foreign exchange? Even those outside the 43 items struggling for foreign exchange, who were officially allowed, they weren't getting allocation. So where we now get allocation for the other 43 items you are bringing back. So demand management approach to foreign exchange matter in this environment requires a lot of harmonization. For example, India said, if Indians cannot grow their food, let Indians go hungry. If Indians cannot manufacture their own cloth, let Indians go naked. Can we have that kind of mindset in this environment? These are some of the things that can come from regulators. These are some of the things that can come from government. We need not resign to fate. We are talking about the remittances. What incentives have we provided the diasporans to bring back their money? The issue of what is in it for me if I bring my dollar, given the peculiar circumstances of our environment today. Have we answered that? How do we incentivize remittances into Nigeria? It's a raging question. Let me rest it that way.
Right.
And briefly to the question you asked.
Yeah, how do you handle the...
I am a victim of all that commentator has said. A victim of everything. Harassment on the road, the problem of storage, the problem of other facilities. In my own farm as of today, in fact, about 5 kilometers to my farm, I maintain it on a yearly basis. I generate my water. I generate my power, my storage facilities. At the end of the day, I start struggling with problem of off-takers. Coming from Ekiti, my farm is in Ekiti. Coming from Ekiti down to Lagos, at times you will meet about 25, 30 checkpoints. And because they are seeing their palm oil, they are seeing their plantain banana, they are seeing their yam, they are seeing their maize, it's like you've committed an offense. And you've got to settle us. That is the dilemma today. And I'm not talking about insecurity. In fact, Ekiti now is a victim of herdsman, farmers' clashes. One happened in Ikere over the weekend. And acres of farmland destroyed by cows. These are real problems. And some of them with more efforts, more commitment, and maybe, I don't want to say seriousness, but with some commitment, let me just leave it at that. Government can still do a lot in arresting some of this. Some of us are even asking ourselves, why did I go into farming? But all I produce is food, which is in tandem with President's initial slogan of food security for Nigeria. But we are getting frustrated by all forces. And there are steps government can take immediately to bail us out, those of us who have taken the initiative to support this mantra of food security for Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Prof. Definitely, it's a tough one. Out there, you're trying to, do your regular business, but you have different forces, coming and trying to stop you, at this time. Let me come to Dr. Alomna with this question now. It says, how can you save in this serious economy? For example, you're earning like 100,000 naira. You have fees, you have bills, lining up for you. How do you manage at whatever income level you're at?
I think if I have an answer to that question, I'll be in high demand all over the world. It's really a very difficult one. When you think about the money you're earning, for most of us, you earn salary. That salary hasn't increased, but every other thing has increased. I saw a cartoon yesterday. Somebody was showing me how you had like 3 individuals all labeled. One labeled cost of fuel, cost of food, and cost of something else, and they were all grown, and the salary was still small. And they were asking salary, well, how come you're the only one not growing in our family? So that's the reality, that every individual will have the supply of cash or funds will always be small compared to the demand. So back to, Prof just talked about on the national scale that our demand management is weak. So on an individual scale as well, we need to then watch our demand management. And that means sometimes your lifestyle needs to change. So if you have 100K and you have to do all these other things, people are beginning to think of how do we change the school of our children to something that is affordable? How do we buy less of one thing or the other? You have to change your lifestyle. You have to change your lifestyle. When we're talking about optimizing costs, one of it is energy. How do we reduce our energy costs? In the past, you go into a house and you put on all the lights. But now you have to think twice. You put on light only where you are, because you have to save energy. So everyone needs to think, how do we reduce our management costs? And then back to the 100K and the need to save. The truth is, because saving is a commitment, it's like having to pay your tithe. It's a commitment you make for the future. So think, how do I put that thing aside first before I start to spend? If you want to spend before you save, you will not save. So think, save first, and then can spend whatever is left. It's a discipline that everybody will have to incorporate into their life, into their lifestyle.
And I'm guessing at this time, with the level of inflation, we know that savers are heavily impacted.
Yes, because as you save, the value of that saving
keeps going down.
So that points to the discussion we were having earlier about what do you do with that fund. So it's not just to put under your mattress. You need to think of a way to make that money, no matter how small it is, to work for you. We are hearing this morning about the things you can do with 5,000, 1,000. So as you put it aside, you need to make it work for you so it can grow, it can add value.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Alomna. But I have a very interesting question here. It says, the last time I came for the economic summit, it was packed. Now it's a bit scanty. Definitely something is chasing people. Hunger is in town. My question is, RCCG, as a formidable church organization looking into agriculture investment as support structure to what's on the ground, believe it or not, poverty is at the doorstep. May the Lord help us. Pastor Peter, I think I'll let you answer this one.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is RCCG looking into encouraging people to invest in agriculture? The answer is yes. In fact, all the provinces have been told that we should get people interested in agric. And the church, had acquired land, a lot of land, which the church was going to allocate to the provinces for those that want to get involved with agriculture. It's not only that, I'm also aware another of the church organs where I heard, in fact, these are just boys, we call it the Option of Hope. Part of what they do now, they have to go to the farm. Mommy Joe, insisted that they must know how to farm. And I think it must go beyond the church. People should also look into those areas. If not to farm, to sell, to farm to feed your own family. It's getting to that level that if there are some things you can do, vegetables around your house and things like that, you should do it, to try and reduce the cost of things. That's where we are. Because if we cannot feed ourselves as a country, it makes the matters worse. Because even the scarce foreign exchange now, before, if you go to the market, most of the rice we used to eat in Nigeria is from Thailand, it's from China, it's from everywhere. We spend a lot of money importing wheat to make bread. Wheat could be grown in Nigeria. Some people get into that kind of business. And talking of what one can do, somebody was asking a question that Prof was answering. Things are tough. When you look at the business model of a Dangote, for instance, before the man went into cement production, if he had sat down to really listen to the so-called experts, they will have told you, in Nigeria, there's no power, there's no water, you can't do this one. But the man said, okay, fine. If there's no power and I have to make cement, I have to produce my own power. So you do the extra spending, and then you make the returns. It's making a lot of money. But when you look at it, it's like a fully integrated kind of plant that he has. Obajana, you go there, they have their own power and everything. And who wants to do refinery? In Lekki, when the man started, the ground there is soft. If you go there and you see how many number of piles went into that kind of place, we should get at least, if you can get 15 Nigerians doing what Dangote is doing, this country will move forward. The other thing people will complain about, he did that one, he did that one. For me, what is more important also is that most of his money is invested in Nigeria. Some of the eastern countries, Far East, some of their leaders, they made a lot of money. But when they came together and said, look, let us develop our country, they brought that money back to the country. There's no point Nigerians stealing money and putting the money in bank account overseas to earn 0.5%. Why don't you bring the money back to Nigeria? Maybe we are going to look for a way to forgive people. To say, go and sin no more. But the one that you have stolen, bring it back and invest it in the country.
Definitely an interesting one there. And talking about, taking some extreme measures now to manage our foreign currency demand. Me, I'm ready to make that sacrifice. So thank God my suit was made here in Nigeria. But I don't know about the fabric. But I'm ready to make that sacrifice because I cherish the Naira and I want the Naira to actually receive strength. So if you're with me, please, hashtag strengthen the Naira. That is all we should be pushing, at this point. We have another question here. I'm going to take this one to Mrs. Akinde. It says, what kind of investment is advisable for a retiree of over 60 years?
Something flashes in my mind, and that was about maybe 2000. My dad had a friend who retired, and then my dad said, see, you've been a civil servant all your life. I don't see you having an entrepreneurial drive, okay? Just get your money, just maybe put it in a fund and earn interest on it. But it was like, he had several other advisors, opened cyber cafe, did a couple of things, and of course, before he could bat an eyelid, he was asking, where's the money? All right. So for someone who is over 60 years, Pastor Pitan already mentioned, your health is very important. You don't want an investment that you've got to monitor every single thing. Like, okay, has wheat price gone up? What's the weather saying? So you want an investment that has a low risk. Now, because it's low risk, the return is also low. But in certain times, you can have a high return. So think about the treasury bills I mentioned. A year is giving 19%. Okay? Some years back, it was as low as 3-4%. But because of the issues with the Naira, they don't want people to be speculating on the Naira. So let's give them something quite attractive. So you think, oh, should I go for dollars or Naira? And also to attract foreign investors. So it's a party. It will soon be over, okay? But aside that, you also want to put your money in maybe some of these funds that are professionally managed, okay? So they're able to, like I mentioned, able to invest in some of these high-yield investment, okay? But you also want to maybe diversify. Maybe have a bit you want to take a little risk on. It can give you a good potential, okay, a good return. But even if you lose out on all that, it doesn't affect you, all right? So that's what I was like. Okay, you mentioned real estate. It depends on the size of funds you have, okay? Real estate is a bit tough now because even some people are telling the to come get their money. But look, things like maybe in a community where you see that, maybe in an environment where it's maybe we have maybe the middle class and things like that. Look, some people just buy old houses, okay, remodel, and then they're able to get a higher rent on it. So little things like that you can do. At least if you can get good tenants, you wouldn't have too much headache over that. But the main thing is you want an investment that wouldn't affect your health, okay? So I think that would be my take.
Talking about an investment, I want to. You definitely don't want to go near cryptocurrency because the volatility in that market is incredible. You want to say?
Sorry, just to add one or two things, because there was a session I had here, with the retired people, 60 and above, and they will tell you they don't have money. Many of them, we retired, we don't have money. So when you're talking of investment, even the little that we have, it's not even enough for us. And I said sometimes some of these people who are 60 and above do not fully understand that some of them are sitting on wealth. You see, some of these people who are 60 and above, many of them bought their plots of land in their 20s in those days, in their 30s in those days. Many of them have now built 4-bedroom apartments or big houses, waiting for their children who are in Canada to come back and come and stay with them. It's a wasting asset. Some of those houses today are worth 500 million naira, 600 million naira. It's better for them, if they have good advisors, to sell those big properties and buy a flat. You have money for investment. Even some of the houses in Surulere today are 250 million naira. So these people who are 60 and above, you are not as poor as you are making yourself to be. You need to look at your assets again and see how you can reallocate those assets. And I told them too, I said, look, some of you, if you look at it, how many people come to visit you in your house now? I said, you can go and buy a 3-bedroom apartment in camp. There's light in camp, there's water in camp. And you have money that you can invest. Some people have taken my advice. I hope camp will not be too full very soon.
I guess demand for camp properties will soon outpace supply at this rate. All right, let me come to Dr. Alomna with this one. This one is directed at you, really. It says, how can LCCI be of help to exporters?
So at the Chamber is an institution that provides support and a platform for businesses across different sectors. And we also have sector groups, because a lot of the issues that people face in business, it's difficult to go it alone. So having those sector groups help. Even the question they asked about how do you deal with all of these tout people, sometimes being in a group helps. So we have an export group. So if you reach out to us, we have an export group, and that export group provides information on a lot of different things. You need information. Sometimes you go into things blindly, and then we say it's not working, but it is working for others. So you need to get the right information. You need to do the right things to be able to move ahead. Also back to partnerships and collaborations. In a lot of ways, you can find individuals who are interested in the same type of product, exporting the same type of product that you are interested in, and you can work together, work out a partnership that works for both of you. So please reach out to us, and we can connect you to the members in our export group.
There you have it. LCCI supports the exporters, basically. All right. This one now is for Professor Segun here. It says, sir, if you are to advise the President, President Tinubu, on how to solve the country's economic problems, what would be your 5 key suggestions?
Quite an interesting question, sir. The number one thing is to operationalize this slogan. Produce what you consume. Consume what you produce. So is there a way, for example, we can popularize Abakaliki rice? We can popularize Igbima rice and other staples in preference for Indian rice. Indian population, for God's sake, is 1.3 billion human beings. They are feeding themselves and they are exporting to us. It's an embarrassment. So if we can look at that, what do we do sector by sector? Starting from the issue of food security. Number 2, can we revisit our import substitution strategy as a country? I think that document needs to be revived. Like I said earlier on, we have very, very unwinding import list. We are still importing toothpick 63 years after independence, for God's sake. Import biscuits, import drinks, import perfume. Can we revisit that import substitution strategy? Then we are now talking about being home to all sorts of things. You see, with our population, it's simple economic principle that if you produce, you generate multiplier effects. You provide opportunities for employment, you earn income, you strengthen the capacity, the productive capacity of the economy. But you know what is happening in Nigeria? We consume to benefit other economies. So the benefit that should reside in and with us in this local economy, they are being taken away by other economy producing for us. If we revisit our import substitution strategy, then we'll be able to dimension sector by sector. What do we do to strengthen the local capacity? What do we do to reduce our vulnerability to imports? And on agric, let's remember the then General Obasanjo in 1976, when he launched Operation Feed the Nation, he said a nation that could not feed itself was at the mercy of other nations. Almost 50 years after Operation Feed the Nation in 1976, we are still unable to feed ourselves. That's number 2. Number 3, I will again talk about export promotion strategy. How long do we want to continue to expose ourselves to petrodollar, accounting for about 90% of our foreign exchange earnings? What can we do sector by sector to encourage export beyond rhetorics? Because whether we like it or not, oil itself is becoming maybe an old source of energy. So sooner or later, the popularity of oil will continue to go down. So why should we continue to rely on that segment and to worsen matters for us? We export raw materials. We import finished products because our refineries are not working. So if we make refineries work, at least for the time being, we will be able to at least take care of our local consumption while we conserve foreign exchange. Then we go to non-oil export, sector by sector, including services. Singapore today, sir, is one of the 5 fastest growing economies in the world. They have no natural resources. They export technology. They export services. How can we develop these segments of our national economy to generate foreign exchange? Number 4 is issue of, we are never bereft of ideas in this environment. I was a member of the federal government committee on a National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 and Agenda 2050. This was the issue we're asking ourselves. What has changed? Let's look, in fact, let's look for our 3rd National Development Plan. That development plan, 1975 to 1980, can qualify us as what we can call industrial development plan for Nigeria. That's when Ajaokuta was conceived, refinery, petrochemicals, and so on and so forth. We jettisoned it after the oil glut of 1978. Can we look at all those as a way of repositioning our economy? We are not bereft of plans, we are not bereft of policies, but we are bereft of implementation. At a forum like this, I was recommending, perhaps we need another ministry, maybe Ministry of Policy Implementation. If I will ask you, sir, even here, RCCG, I was hearing now that you've had 6 of this. After today, what happens to all that we are saying here? Where are we graduating our recommendations here at this forum today? Where will they read all that we are saying here? Where will they read about it? Let me give one example, sir. As president of CIBN, I started something. I said, I'm tired of all this annual gathering. It becomes talk shop instead of workshop. We talk, we disperse. Next year we come, we start as if we've never seen ourselves before. If we have a communique who is following up, if we are recommending central bank do this, how will that get to central bank? Or it will end here. If we are saying Governor Sanwo-Olu for Lagos State, can you take these steps? How will Governor Sanwo-Olu, after these events here today, know that a group of human beings gather together to recommend this? In other words, how do we follow up and police our resolutions? If we can have a paradigm shift in that area as number 4, then we'll be better off. Lastly, is the issue of accountability, transparency. Lack of that has bred corruption and all unshady practices. If we can be more accountable at all levels, be I local government chairman, be I MD of a bank, be I governor of a state, be I minister in a particular ministry, how accountable am I in terms of the mandate given to me and the power that follows? The list is long, but if we can look at even just these 5 that I've mentioned, I think we'll be a different country, sir.
Thank you so much. Definitely. We have so many recommendations, and sometimes we media people, sometimes we also get tired, of talking on TV, about the problems, and we still see the problems, with us. The actions are not taken. But sometimes when we raise some of these issues, we're happy that we're able to bring the government to have a rethink, on some of these issues. Sometimes they actually do listen, and we pray that they, listen more, going forward, and we see some more action. We have more questions there. The questions are a lot, trust me, and very, very, very informative questions there. But this one is talking about investment portfolio. Which one beats inflation of 29.9%? That's the inflation number we got for the first one in 2024. Ms. Akinde, can you help us with this one?
Okay. If you want to beat inflation, then you need to take a higher level of risk. So like I mentioned, higher risk, higher return. Okay. it's been the empirical, support or evidence that equities markets beat inflation. However, that is on the average. So it's not like in a particular every year it beats it. So on the average, like mentioned, so in 2021 the equities market returned about 6%. Okay, in 2022 I think about 20%. Last year 46%. As of yesterday, it had already returned 39%. That beats inflation, all right? But of course, we're not investing in the basket. So as I said, some stocks have even done over 50%. Some have done over 100% this year, all right? You tend to hear that real estate also beats inflation, but that's when you account for capital gains. So you buy rental yields, like maybe 3, maybe best to get is 5% on rental yield. So for real estate investment beating inflation is when you account for when you sell the property, and that's when you make the bulk of the game. But like Pastor Pitan said, you need to do your research as well. So if you're trying to beat inflation, okay, you're willing to take on extra risks, and do you have the capacity to take it? So extra risk means amplified returns. It can also mean loss of that capital. So you want to be careful about that. But on the average, it's been proven that equities and some other alternative investments, so commodities, as well. So yeah, let me just stop there. Thank you.
So definitely you can inflation with the right portfolio mix. But, at the end of the day, we've seen issues where, like now, talking about the NGX, it's at an all-time high. It's a level we've not seen before, looking at the all-share index of the NGX. Is it still a safe place to play in 2024, in your opinion?
Is it still a safe place to play? I will still say yes. Now, you're not buying the baskets, okay? I earlier mentioned you're trying to pick stocks, okay, that have certain characteristics, companies, okay, of course, stocks of companies. So I mentioned companies that are kind of defensive, all right? So they don't have too much FX exposure, or they have FX exposure. So I know a company that 92% of their cost of sales is input cost, raw materials, and they import almost the entire thing. However, because of the nature of the product, so substitutes are more expensive, so people are stuck with it, all right? And for some, there is really no substitute. So they're able to pass the cost to consumers. That's why you're paying more. Okay, so they are maintaining their margin. In fact, their margins even expanded in the midst of all the headwinds. So for that kind of a company that people see prospecting, people want to take cover in those kind of companies. So you can get some pretty decent numbers from there. But companies that are in the same sector, for instance, they have high level of foreign currency loan, they're making losses, their margins are thinning, they don't have the ability to pass costs. Rather than do that, their own margins will be contracting. Maybe they are cyclical companies and the economy is not doing well, they don't tend to do well. So you want to avoid those kind of companies. But look, it's not your forte. You're not going to start taking the finance courses that you just need basic knowledge. However, there are funds, okay, that invest in, there are funds that are professionally managed. So we've got the fund manager, they tend to pick out some of these stocks, but also they have different kind of funds for different kind of strategies, okay. So you want to talk to investment advisor and see how you can play in that space. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Let me come to Dr. Alomna now. This one says, I'm a graduate with no job at the moment. And to get a job, they keep asking me for 2 to 3 years minimum experience. How do you handle that?
Okay, so I think that we get the notion that working experience has to be formal employment, paid employment. I like to say to the young ones, you can volunteer. You can volunteer in a lot of places. There are places that require your skills, your tiny expertise, you can volunteer with that. So start with what you have. And every time you volunteer, all you need to ask is, please, can you give me a reference? And that builds up your portfolio. So nobody should say, oh, I have been unemployed for 2 years. I'm wondering, you mean you've been sitting down in your house and sleeping for 2 years? You must be able to do something. Even if it's a church and you're volunteering in the accounts department, you're gaining experience, isn't that? So you need to be able to pull that together and document that. Even my children in school, as they're in school, they're building their CVs. Every time they volunteer to do this or that, they ask for reference and they're building up their CV. So when they come out, you're wondering, okay, so you've just finished school, but you have years of experience. So nobody should sit around and say, oh, I don't have, I'm looking for work experience. You can get work experience on the streets in Lagos. So shine your eyes.
Shine your eyes. It reminds me of that joke where I think a 25-year-old was trying to apply for a job, and they told him to get at least 20 years experience. Like, where do you get that from? In the belly. All right, this one's for Pastor Peter now. It says, Pastor Peter talked about outsourcing non-core functions. Agreed. But the reality is that there are many fake expert consultants out there. Can Pastor Peter or the organizers share some reliable, credible experts to assist with research into these various investment areas?
Thank you. Just to add one or two things to what Dr. Alomna said, first of all, about people looking for jobs without experience. I remembered our first accountant in the church was just a young lady. I said, who's an accountant here? And say, I'm an accountant. And I said, look, we need somebody very quickly. And we took her on. She's now in Canada with her family. It was in church. She qualified, ICANN. The accountant before her is in London, church accountant. We have two guys in our CMM, that's, our multimedia. One is in London, one is in Canada. Let me tell you, if you have good skills, one of the best places you can get experience is in church. One, you are doing the job and you are praying. Doors open. The two ladies, the two accountants, they were not getting market salaries, but they were doing the job, and God bless them. But if they were going to write their CV, you won't say you didn't know anything. You will say, I'm an accountant of Lagos Province 35. I'm an accountant in charge of a whole region or sub-region. And you put it there. But you sit at home for 2 years without a job, you're not doing anything. Your father has friends, your mother has friends, they have companies. You can talk to your father. Daddy, just talk to your friend. I don't want salary. It has a good company. That's how they can help you. If your father's friend sees how you are working in his farm, he on his own will try to be paying you. So please don't sit at home and say that there are no jobs. There are jobs. Go and volunteer to work for free. Now talking about consultants and things like that, it is true. It's not everybody you are going to have. But in Bank of Industry, for instance, we have people that can even help people put together some of their documents. And it's on the website. We have them for each state. So if you have a particular business you want to do, you don't have to put things together, your documents. You just go to our site, you look at one of the consultants, you go and talk to them, and if the people help you to package it, we pay them based on their success factor. You don't even pay. The bank pays. It's part of the service Bank of Industry provides for Nigerians. And I'm sure there are other companies where you can also have the same thing done. And in church, like you were saying, they have a group that does exports. In my own church also, we have subgroups. We have one for lawyers, we have one for bankers. Go and join a group that you are interested in. That group can help you get good consultants because they know themselves. They can tell you a friend who can do it for you at half the cost. You want to do a website, if you join a group in your church, we call it SIG in TOD, Special Interest Group. They can tell you, this guy is reliable. This thing you want to do for $500,000, he can do it for 150,000. You'll be surprised how much resources churches actually have. You'll be surprised. Really surprised.
Thank you for that, Pastor Peter. But this next question, I believe everyone is going to chip in, on this one for sure. It says, thank you, sirs and ma'ams, for this great exposition. I think there is need to also address the spiritual aspect of doing business. If we are aware at all, this knowledge without any spiritual dimension to it the business will surely collapse. If I get into daddy, mommy, uncle, auntie for money, if I get to them for monetary aid to support the business and it collapses, and because they have, maybe they put some of their retirement funds and they were wasted, some will be really hurt by this. I've not only lost business, but I've lost generational relationships, as the children may never forgive me. I think guidance on what to do, how to do business is key and very important. Please, can you throw more light on the spiritual dimension? Pastor Pitan, I want to start off with that then.
I've always preached this. Business is warfare. One of the temptations Jesus Christ had was that Satan took him to the peak mountains, showed him everywhere, New York, Australia, and said, look, if you just worship me, bow down and worship me, I will give you these kingdoms. Now, Bible will not call something temptation if it is not true that you can fall into it. Jesus Christ didn't tell Satan that the things you are trying to give to me does not belong to you. So it must be a real temptation. He just said to him, God says, it seems that you are going to worship. So it is true Satan can bless, but there's a cost. Bible says the blessing of the Lord is maketh rich, and there is no sorrow added to it. So if you want to have these things, it's like you are fighting to get it from the enemies that has it. You must be spiritually alert. One of the things I did, in my, I would say, previous years, I used to be an export manager in one of the banks many years ago, early part of my career. I now left the bank. I now went into business for myself. I was doing cocoa business. I was exporting cocoa. We buy cocoa from Akure, we buy from Ondo, we bring them the cocoa to Lagos, we export it. One day, some of the staff working for me went and bought bad cocoa. Let me start with the bank. When I was still in the bank, some of the staff working under me brought in bad cocoa for refinancing. So when I checked the SGS reports, say, why did you guys bring this kind of thing? This is bad cocoa. We will not pay for it. A few days later, the staff said, the person that supplied the cocoa would like to see me. So let her come. It was an Alaja. So she came to the bank where I was. She sat in front of me. So I understand, manager, that you said you will not finance, you will not pay for the cocoa that I supplied. I said, yes, I'm sorry, ma'am. The cocoa is not good. She looked at me. Said, and you are a fine boy, you. But like this, I will fight you. That night, for the first time in my life, I saw a monster in my dream. I've heard Yoruba people talk about Shigidi. I never imagined that thing existed. That night, for the first time in my life, I saw Shigidi. A monster without eyes, without anything, with a club coming to club me. I just shouted right there in my sleep, Jesus. Something came and smashed the Shigidi. A few days later, the woman came and took her cocoa. I will tell you why I'm telling you that story. Years later, I left the bank. I went to business for myself. The staff working for me did not know this woman. They went and bought cocoa from her for me. She supplied them bad cocoa again. So when they came, I said, where have you gone to buy this cocoa from? They said, one Alaja. I saw the name. I smiled. I said, tell her we don't want her cocoa. They told me, but she's going to argue. I said, don't worry. Just tell her we don't want. They came back and told me what happened. They went to see her and told her that our guy said that the cocoa is not good. He doesn't want it. Come and carry the cocoa. They said, the woman just asked them, what is the name of your boss? As soon as they mentioned my name, said she kept quiet and said, I will come and carry it. Because between the woman and myself, we knew what had happened before. So if you do business without praying, it's difficult enough to do business. Now do it without praying. More so when things are hard like this. When things are hard, people go to different places. They do different sacrifices. You need to fortify yourself spiritually. The people that you are doing business with are not ordinary people, though, most of them. Some, before they came to your office, they have put powder, special powder. So yes, they need to fortify themselves.
Praise the Lord. So yes, whoever wrote that question is on point. In business, there is the God factor, and you can't take that away. You see, we're in a recession, almost like famine time, and you will not expect that God is sitting in heaven and scratching his head and saying, hey, what am I going to do about Nigeria? That's impossible. That means that even before we got to this state now, God is releasing strategies to people. That is why during COVID, you had people who were making a lot of money and there were people who are struggling. In these times when things are so hard, there are people who are also making a lot of money because God always releases strategies. When, before the famine in Egypt happened, God released strategies to a heathen Pharaoh. So how much more his people, his children? He will always, it's just that we are so busy running around the whole place and not going to him. And so we don't get the strategies for the business we want to go to. Some of us, before we go into a business, we ask everybody, we ask Google, we do, but we never go to God and say, God, how do I succeed in this particular business? What is the strategy for this business? God gave Pharaoh the strategy. Joseph came and interpreted it for him, but it took Pharaoh to say, let us implement it. So that's also part of the strategy. Sometimes God gives people word, and either the word is not seeming nice, and people are not going to listen to it. So you put God's word aside and you go and do your own thing. We have to listen to God and we have to obey God. If we don't obey God, if we don't implement what God has said, no matter how good it is, if Pharaoh didn't say, Joseph, now go and do what you have just said, and they got it done, Egypt would have been wiped out in that 7 years. So God always releases the wisdom for everything. The Bible says in Isaiah 11 that Jesus did not judge by what he saw or what he heard. It was because the Spirit was upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. That's what we need even in the marketplace. But if we discard that and say it doesn't matter, let's just go on with business, that's why we always hit the brick wall. So let's go back to the place of listening to God. God gives strategies. That's right. How he is.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Very instructive there. So I'd like to hear from Professor Ajibola and Mrs. Kemi Akinde very quickly, as we can round up.
It's not just business that is warfare. Even life itself is warfare. Business complicates it. But business we must. We look at Cain and Abel, Abraham and Lot, Esau and Jacob. All true. There was business element in the problem. In each case. But at times, we even make mistakes thinking. There was another forum where we spoke how to survive during difficult times. And I was invited as a speaker. That's as Christians. How do Christians survive during difficult times? And I changed the topic. How not to survive during difficult times. Most of us, we embrace what we should not embrace to survive. My wife was telling me, how can you buy a bag of rice now and it will be up to 50 kg? 1 or 2 kg will have disappeared. Those taking that, are they all pagans? There could be deacons, could even be pastors, could be church ushers, and so on and so forth. There you now come to church, you kneel down. God blesses what you have and your heart. Jesus asked, when they said we have over 5,000 to feed, what did he say? What do you have? What we have in terms of resources, in terms of the quality of our grey matter, God is ready to bless. But when we now, what Yorubas usually call 10D, when we now want to go our own way, then God becomes a spectator. It is not wrong for us to become rich. It's the love of it. So what I would say, sir, is that as Christians, in fact, without vision, the generation perishes. To what extent have we listened to God? In going into specific areas, God speaks. God shows vision. Right. God tells us what we should do. Is for us, if our heart is in tune with Him, He will speak to us. Ditto at different layers of our national life.
Right.
But if we sacrifice our hearts, we sell our soul to the devil, we'll be on our own. No? Either we are talking about business, either we are talking about any other thing. So have we put God first in that business area we want to go into? To what extent have we been sincere? Some of us, we are here today by the grace of God. Pastor just shared his experience. Some of us escape assassin's bullets just because of position we took on business matters while on approval seat in our respective banks. Oh, is that so person? And will be telling me what his colleague had told him, that you are the one that is stopping me from doing this, from doing that. Because outside there is not smiling.
Yeah.
And people are becoming more and more daring. So please, let's be steadfast. And like we have been told. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 22. It is the blessing of God that maketh rich. It's not by power, not by might. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that, Professor. Thank you. Very instructive. Very, very, very instructive. Let me come to Mrs. Akinde, Kemi now. Definitely, I'm sure some of us pray before we buy a stock. Tell us what to do.
As many as are led by the Spirit of God are the sons of God. The promise God made to Abraham is to the seed. And the promise is the Spirit, the Holy Spirit we have. So everything God has, He has encapsulated in it. So everything God wants to give us is already a spiritual reality. When Jesus said it is finished, except it was lying. Okay? So if you check maybe Ephesians, the first 3 chapters, everything is in past tense. God has blessed you. He has done. So He has done everything He's got to do. And then He has put everything as a spiritual reality. So we exist in this physical space. So by the Spirit of God, we are assessing that spiritual reality and converting it to meet our needs. So you need to have that understanding. Then you also need to have the correct perspective of God. God is a loving Father. And I told my husband, the parable of the prodigal son is actually the parable of the loving Father. It was all about the Father. He saw him from afar, ran to meet him. Do you think that was... He would have gone and given him a knock. You, this bad boy, you've come home. He ran, hugged him. Before he could even say, make me a hired servant, he interrupted. Get him the best robe, put sandals on his feet, kill the fattened cow. Do you think that is normal? But God is trying to show you how loving He is. So you could have made a bad investment. You could have, you could have lost money. You could have done that. And you feel, look, it's all over. God is a loving Father. If you could give Christ, so for you to know how much God loves you, you need to know how much He loves Christ. So if you could give up Christ for you, then you can imagine the kind of love He has for you. So if you could freely give up Christ, then He can give you all things. And He said, look, He gives us power to make wealth. It's His good pleasure that we have sufficiency in all things, so we can abound unto every good work. So if we think about business or everything, God is interested in, look, all the disciples of Jesus Christ, they were described in present continuous tense. They were working, fishing, mending their net. They were actively working. Even when God created man, what did He say? He said you should just stay in the garden and looking at flowers and smelling flowers. No, work, tend it. So there is that element of work. So He wants us to look. He who does not work should not eat. All right, so, and Paul even talked about those who are, Anyway, the bottom line is we need to work. So if in that space, God is very interested in it, okay? But like they mentioned, you need to trust God. Look, sometimes it looks as if God is just not there, like he's silent on your case. Trust him that all things work together for good. You know, we can keep on saying, but look, just trust God. Even when things look quite bad, trust him. And whatever decision, whatever he puts in your heart to do, follow. It might look quite awkward. So look, I sent an invoice and I had with him like commission I should put a certain amount, but it's an amount that I've never put in an invoice. But like, just put it there, I sent it, and they called me, this is expensive. I said, no, it's not expensive. I said, no, I cannot reduce it. And guess what? It's okay, it's not a problem. But I could have gone with my own natural reason, like, this is too big, let me just reduce it. So whatever God puts in your heart, just follow. As many as are led by the Spirit of God, that is sons of God, and it's his sons that are heirs, and his heirs that actually inherit it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Very instructive. And, you know, from what we've heard from our panelists at this point, I've learned a lot. I don't know about you and our people that are also watching online. I guess 2024, we have to hold God really tight. Thank you so much for listening to this panel. Hope you had fun. So I'd like to call on Pastor Remy Morgan now for the closing remarks and prayers.